Hello everyone, this is Ankit Jain. I welcome you all to my channel Tech Journey with Ankit. Hope you all are doing well. Today is day 12 of our LWC bootcamp, and in today's session, we will be exploring more on the asynchronous JavaScript, where we will be discussing the few important concepts of the JavaScript, including the promises as well as the async await. Moreover, we will also go and explore few more functionalities related to the promise, like we do have the Promise.all method, Promise.any method, Promise.race method. We will explore the purpose of each and every method in this today's bootcamp. So before we go and get started, a quick intro about me. My name is Ankit Jain. I do have more than 10 years of experience in the Salesforce ecosystem, where I got an opportunity to work as a Salesforce uh, architect, also as a corporate trainer too. I do have experience on the different clouds, including the Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, CPQ, and the billing. Moreover, I do have the strong experience in the Lightning Web Component as well as on the integration too. So let's get started. So in case you guys like to connect with me, you guys can connect with me on the LinkedIn. You can also subscribe my YouTube channel, and I'll request you guys to get connected with me on the Telegram as well, where I do provide the solution for all the queries that you do have. Okay, let's get started. So let's try to understand first what is asynchronous JavaScript. What is the purpose of asynchronous JavaScript? And why we do have a situation that we referred as a callback hell. So whenever we want to do some action in the background, let's say you want to make a server call, you want to make some server call, you want to get some data. In such scenarios, we can go for the asynchronous JavaScript. Let's say you have to go and get the records from the Apex class. Again, you will go for the asynchronous JavaScript. Let's say you have to make the callouts to the third-party API and get the records. Again, you have to go for the asynchronous JavaScript. Whenever we want to improve the performance of our application, the one way to do it is definitely go and follow the asynchronous JavaScript. But when we use the asynchronous JavaScript, most of the times we fall into a situation of callback hell. Now let's try to understand what is callback hell. Let's say I do have the different methods that I have to call asynchronously. Asynchronously is nothing but we have to go and get this called in the background. So how we can do that? To get the method called in the background, the first thing that we have to go here is we have to go and put a method call. Let's say whatever the output that we are getting from this method call, we have to go and pass that output to another method. So you can see first we have called here the get article method. After we have called the get article method, next time we have called here the get user data method, and after we have called here the get user data method, we have calling the get address method. So basically here you can see we are having a situation like one call is dependent on the other call and other call is dependent on the other call. Whenever we do have that kind of a situation, it is referred as the callback hell. The reason being here, what we are doing, we are having the one call inside the other call, inside that we do have the another call. So whenever we do have that kind of a situation, we refer that situation as a callback hell situation. Let me also put another example for the callback hell here. Let's say I am making the timeout. Let me put this on the notepad so that you guys can understood what I'm trying to say. Let's say here, or let me do it on the editor. It will be much better. Let me quickly increase the font size. It's already 20. Let me go to the script file, and what I want to explain here is the first situation of the callback hell. Let's say I'm making the set timeout call method here. We already covered the set timeout in the previous session. Okay, so what I want to do, as soon as the timeout has been happened, my one method to be called. Okay, and this timeout needs to be done after, let's say, 5000 millisecond. So let's say here what I am doing here is, as soon as the timeout has been done, I want to print one message, and let's say the message that I want to print here is the hello one. Okay, now inside this I want to make another call out. or I want to make another set timeout. So what I have to do after the 5000 seconds, I want to make another method call to the same similar timeout. So again, I am doing the exact same thing here, right? And in this again, I am putting another console log, that is the set timeout 2. So when this method will execute, whenever my first method will execute, again it will wait for the 5000 seconds and this method will again execute. Right now, let's say I want to do the similar thing multiple times. So let's say now inside this again I am calling another method, and here I am referring that method as the 3. Now again inside this I again want to call the set timeout. Now you can understand what kind of situation that we do have. This kind of situation is referred as the callback hell. Whenever we are making one callback inside the another callback and that situation goes for a longer time, it is referred as the callback hell situation. Right? Most of the times it makes very challenging for the developers to go and perform the debug operation in such kind of a callback. Now in the modern JavaScript, we do have the two methods or two ways to escape this callback hell. The first one is the promises and second one is the async await. The first one is the promises and second one is the async await. Now what we'll do in the case of promise, like here we have called this method inside the loop, inside one after the other. Now the way we will call here in a much cleaner approach. So we will call this get article method. Once we got the output from this get article, then we are calling the get username method. Once we are getting the output from this one, then we are calling the get address. You can see the way this upper code has been written and the code has been written with the promises is much cleaner. In case you want to write more neater code which looks exactly like the way we execute our synchronous JavaScript, then you can go for the async await. So the last code that you can see here, this is written with the help of the async await. All these three code snippets, they are doing the exact same thing, but they are doing the things quite differently. The first snippet, it is using the callback hell situation. The second snippet, it is using the promises, and the third one, it is using the async await. I hope it is clear to everyone what is callback hell and what is asynchronous JavaScript. Right? Now let's go and try to deep dive all these things one by one. First we will deep dive into the promise. After that we will go and explore the async await as well. So what is promise? Promise is basically, in a very layman term, if I have to call what is promise, promise is basically a promise which says that I will return something at a later time. I will not return something immediately, but I will return something definitely at a later time. Again, what I will return, either the output or the error, but there is something that I will definitely return. Whenever we do have that kind of a scenario, we go for the concept of promise. Again, I am repeating, promise is nothing but a promise which says that we will return something. But when I will return at a later time. I will not return it immediately, but I will return it at a later time. Again, whatever I will return based on the response that I am getting from the server, either I will return the successful output or I will return an error. Generally, we go for the promises with respect to the Salesforce whenever we are making any Apex call. Whenever we are making any callouts from the LWC. Let's say I have to integrate my Lightning Web Component to get the weather forecast detail, or I have to integrate my Lightning Web Component to get the currency conversion detail. So what we do, we go and make a call out with the third-party services. So whenever we are making the call outs to the third-party services, we generally do that with the help of promise. How to do that? Again, we will see down the line. We have planned this for tomorrow, how we can make the integration with the third-party system by using the JavaScript. And everything that we discussed, all the Apex method and everything, it will always returns you the promise. So in your Lightning Web Component, whenever you are making any Apex call, in return, what you are getting is the promise. This promise object, it do supports the two properties. First one is the state and second one is the result. So whenever you are performing any promise, it always deals in the two states. Sorry, it always deals with the two properties. First is the state and second is the result. Every promise will fall under the three state. First one is the pending state, second one is the fulfilled state, and third one is the rejected state. So promise object have two properties. First one is the state, second one is the result. States in promise we do have the three different types of state. First one is the pending state, second one is the fulfilled state, and third one is the rejected state. As soon as you are making the request with the promise, let's assume that from your lightning web component you have invoked the apex method. Okay, your promise will be in the pending state unless and until promise is returning something from the apex, or promise is getting something from the apex. Your promise, it will be in the pending state. Your promise, it will be in the pending state. So from my lightning web component I am making my apex call. In this scenario my promise will be in the pending state. Now my apex call is successful. I am getting the successful response from my apex. My promise will be in the fulfilled state. My apex call is throwing an error. My promise will be in the rejected state. Right? So by default, the promise goes in these three states: pending state, fulfilled state, and the rejected state. Based on the server response, it will either go into the fulfilled state or it will go into the rejected state. But whenever we are submitting the promise, it will be in the pending state. Now, as per the different states, the result value do vary. So whenever we are submitting the promise in the pending state, the result will be undefined. In case I am getting the successful response, I am getting the result value. In case my promise is rejected, I am getting an error object. In case my promise is rejected, I am getting the error object. Now, let's try to understand the syntax of the promise. Again, in LWC, very rarely we have to go and create the promise. Majority of the times we are accepting the response from the promise. But in case you guys are working on a kind of a complex project where you have to go and create your own asynchronous operation, you should know how we can actually go and create the promise. So to create the promise, we have to use the promise constructor. To create the promise, we have to go and use the promise constructor. And this promise constructor, it will take one callback function. We do have the promise constructor. This promise function, it will take one callback function. This callback function will have the two parameters which are again the functions. Resolve is again the function, reject is again the function. So we do have the promise constructor. This promise constructor is taking the callback function. This callback function is having the two parameters. First one is the resolve, which is again the function. Second one is the reject, which is again the function. Right? In case your operation is successful, you can make it resolved. In case your operation is getting errored out, you can definitely go and reject it. In case your operation is successful, then you can definitely put a resolve. As soon as you are putting the result, the promise state will be fulfilled. As soon as in your promise you are making it as a rejected, your state will be changed to rejected. This is what in case you have to go and create your own promise. Right? Whenever we are dealing with the LWC, for example, let's say I'm making the call to the Apex classes, framework is doing this job for me. Framework is creating the promise on my behalf. I don't have to do anything. I only have to go and handle the promise. I only have to go and handle the promise. So how we can handle the promise? Whenever the promise is fulfilled, or you can say whenever the promise is resolved, then we will executing this then block. Then we will go and execute the then block. So in case the promise is resolved, then the then block will be executed. Or in case the promise is rejected, then the catch block will be executed. In case the promise is rejected, then the catch block will executed. Let's go and try to explore this on the editor, how to actually create the promise. Right? We will also explore how we can handle the promise as well. So let's go and do this one by one. So let me open the code editor. First thing that we will do here is we will go and create one method in which we will return the promise. So let's say I am creating one method here, function, and let's say I'm putting the function name as generate promise. Okay, and in this function, let's say I'm passing one parameter as the message, whatever the message that you want to print from this function. I'm just passing that. As I said, the way we deal with the promise here is we go and create the promise. So what I am doing here is I am creating the promise with the help of promise constructor. I am creating the promise with the help of promise constructor. This constructor, it will take one callback function, and that callback function will have two parameters. One is the resolve and second is the reject. So let me go and put here the two parameters. One is the resolve and second is the reject. Right? Again, I'm using, you can go with the function declaration as well, but here I prefer to go with the arrow function because that is we heavily used in the Salesforce. So I am going here for the arrow function. So I do have one promise. It is taking two parameters. Now let's go and print this message. So what I am doing here is I am calling the set timeout method. In this set timeout method, I do have one callback function which will be executed, and it will go and print the message, whatever the message that you are passing, right? And what will happen now, in case my message is successful, then what I am doing here is I am sending the resolve note here. First we will see the resolve part. After that we will come to the reject part as well. After that we will come to the reject part as well. So let's say here now, the second parameter for the set timeout that I have to pass here is the millisecond. So this is how we go and create the promise. So let me go and put this as a comment. This is how we go and create the promise. So we use the promise constructor. It does take two parameters, resolve as well as the reject. Both are functions. So you can go and pass the resolve here. Right? Now how to call the promise. Now the next thing comes here is how to call the promise. That's what we do in the LWC as well. We always call the promise. So to call the promise, we have to first go and call the method. Whatever the parameters that our method is accepting, you can pass that parameter. Let's say I am passing the parameter here as the first call. What I am doing here is I am passing the parameter here as the first call. And let's say as soon as my promise is successful, then I want to handle that promise. Let's say here I want to put that error message that console.log promise resolved successfully. I want to put the message here as promise resolved successfully. This is how we handle the resolve part. In case my promise is rejected, to handle the error part, we do have the catch functionality. I will come back to the catch in a while. It is not mandatory that we should always go and write down the catch. Although whenever we are dealing with the Lightning Web Component, it is recommended that we should always go and write down the catch whenever we are generating the promise. So let's go and check this output now. Let me go and refresh this page. Cannot read properties of undefined. Okay, sorry, I missed to put here one keyword, as we have to return the promise because this .then method will only work whenever we are returning the promise on that method. So that's what I have done now. So let me go and refresh this one more time. If I go to the console, you can see here the first call has been done and promise is resolved successfully. My first call has been done and promise is resolved successfully. Let's say I want to print another message as soon as my first call has been done. Previously we understood how we have to do in the callback help, right? Now we have to do the same thing with the help of promise. Then I can say that as soon as my first call has been resolved, you can go and call the another method. So to do that, what I am doing here is, let me go and put here again generate promise, and here I can invoke the second call as well. I can invoke the second call as well. So we can do the chaining of the operation. Now, so this method now is invoking the promise. So again, I can handle that promise and I can say that, let's say here I am putting that first promise resolved successfully, and here I am putting the message as second promise resolved successfully. Here I am putting the message as second promise resolved successfully. Now you can see here how we can go and call the similar method again and again by performing the chaining. Rather than we go and suffer with the callback health situation. It is very easy to debug. It is very easy to troubleshoot in case your promises are going wrong. Right? This is how we deal with the promises whenever our promise is getting resolved. Let's say my promise is getting rejected. For example, let's say what I want to do here is I want to put one condition here. If there is nothing in the message, for example, let's say that I want to do, in case there is something in the message, then I definitely want to print that message with the help of set timeout. So you can see here we are printing that message here. Now here I am checking that in case my message is empty. We already learned this, how to write down this kind of a situation in the previous session when we go and cover the truthy and the falsy things. So what I am saying here is, in case my message is empty, then what I want to do, I want to reject the promise. What I want to do, I want to go and perform the rejection of the promise. So to how we can do that? So to do that, let me go and put here the reject part. And here I am, let's say I am sending the error message that message is empty. Here I am sending the message that message is empty. Whatever the message that we are sending here, we are not sending that message. That's why my promise is rejected. Now what I will do, definitely we can do the chaining, but let me keep it more simple for the first thing, and after that I will go and show that with the chaining part as well. So let's say again I am calling the same method, generate response. And this time, let's say I'm not passing any parameter value. Initially, we have passed the parameter value and my promise got resolved successfully. Now here, I am not passing any parameter value. And let's go and try to handle the promise now. So what I am saying here is console.log, let's say promise resolved successfully. Okay, in case my promise is rejected, how we can handle the rejection? With the help of dot catch. And here we can go and put promise rejected. In case here we can go and put the promise is rejected. In case you want to access the error message during the rejection, then what you can do here is we do have one parameter, that is the error parameter. Again, not mandatory that you should give the name as an error. You can give any name here. It's completely up to you. And here I am accessing that error message. Here what I am doing here is, as I want to access the rejection details, why my promise has been rejected, which has been sent here. To do that, I am putting the catch parameter here. I am putting the parameter with the dot catch and I am accessing that parameter. Let's go and check this output now. So you can see here we are getting the message as promise is rejected. Why the promise is rejected this time? Because our message is empty. As soon as message is empty, what we are doing? We are rejecting the message. So how we can handle how we are handling the rejection here? With the help of dot catch block. How we are handling the rejection here? With the help of dot catch block. Right? We can do both the things in the same method as well. For example, let's say here, now let me go and comment this again, and here I am uncommenting the old method. So here what we are doing, on the first call we are passing the parameter, on the second call we are passing the parameter. Now let's say in the third call we will not pass any parameter. In the third call we will not pass any parameter. Let me go and not pass any parameter in the third call. So how we can handle the promise? So I can definitely go and put the catch block to accept the error details. We can go and put the error here, and let me go and put the similar thing here, that the promise is rejected, and we can go and print the error message. Right? So my first promise is successful. We are getting the successful response. My second promise is successful. We are getting the second successful response. In case my promise is rejected, we will go and get the error message here. Let me go and process this. You can see here my first promise is successful, my second promise is successful, and here we are getting the error message that my message is empty. That means my promise is rejected here. Let me go and check the comment section if we do have any queries. I hope you guys are getting the understanding what I'm trying to convey with respect to the promises. Right? Now, more cleaner approach rather than we go and write down the promises. Definitely, it's one of the best way. But in the modern JavaScript, we came up with another approach to write down the similar kind of uh, asynchronous operation by using the async await. Very recently introduced, and most of the developers do like to use async await over the promises because it avoids all kind of a confusion, and it will make sure that your code looks like exactly what it looks whenever you are dealing with the synchronous part. So how the async await works? Whenever you have to handle any promises by using the async await, the first thing that you will put here is the async. On the function, you will definitely go and put the async keyword here. But you are letting the JavaScript know that your function is an asynchronous function. Your function is an asynchronous function. Now, the next thing that we have to do here is whenever you are dealing with the promise, you have to make sure that you are using the await keyword here. Right? What you have to do whenever you are dealing with the promise, you have to make sure that you are using the await keyword here. Now, whenever your promise is successful, whenever you are getting the successful response, you will get the output. In case your promise is rejected, then the catch block will execute. Again, I am repeating, whenever your promise is successful, your await block will execute and you will get the successful response. Whenever your promise is rejected, what will happen? Your catch block will execute and here you will get the error message. Now the next key thing that you should know here whenever you are dealing with the async await is whenever you have to use this await keyword, it is mandatory that your function do have the async function. You cannot use this await keyword outside the asynchronous function. You cannot use this await keyword outside the asynchronous function. Next point here is whenever you have to do the error handling, whenever you are using the async await and you have to do the error handling, you should go here for the try catch block. Whenever you have to do the error handling and you are using the async await, you should go for the try catch block. This try catch block will be used to handle the error messages whenever you are using the async await. Okay, now let's go and try to understand this async await again with the similar example. Again, there will be no change the way you are writing the promise. The only change here is how you are handling the promise. Like here, we have handled the promise by using the dot then and the dot catch. Now the similar thing we can also handle by using the async await as well. Right? So whenever you are making the apex call, you can handle the response by using this dot then or dot catch. Also, you can handle the response by using the async await as well. Okay, so first thing that I am doing here is I am creating one asynchronous function. So let's say here I go and put async my function, and let's say I'm giving the function name as generate different promises. Let's say I'm giving this name to this function as generate different promises. Why I am putting here async? Because I want to invoke the promise from this method. That is the reason here I am putting the async keyword. Now the first thing that I want to do here is I want to call this method and print the output. So let's say I am calling this method here. You can see how easy it is. You just have to go and put the await keyword followed by the method name and whatever the parameter that you have to pass. Let's say I am putting here the first call. I am putting here the first call. Let's say you want to make another call, like here we have to go and handle the response with the help of dot then, and then we have to make another call. Here it looks the way we write down the synchronous function where one line will execute one after the other. So let's say here I am putting the second call. So the way it will work here is first it will execute this line. After that it will hold unless and until this function is completed, and after this function is completed, then it will go and start executing this line. So async await is nothing but the better way or the cleaner way of handling the promises, right? Most of the times developers do get confused that whenever they are dealing with the async await, is there a different way that they have to go and generate the promise? The answer is no. Generation of the promise is same. The only difference here is the way we handle the promise. In the case of promise, we go and handle the promise by using the dot then and the dot catch. However, here whenever we have to handle the promise, we go for the async await, and in case we have to do any error handling, we go here for the try catch block. We go here for the try catch block. Let me go and put the catch here in which we are handling the error. So let me go and print the error whatever we are receiving from there. So let me go and print the error here. Right, this is how we go and write down the asynchronous functions to handle the error. Okay, now let's go and check the output whether we are getting the expected response or not. So let me again go back. Okay, the one thing that I missed here is we have not called this asynchronous function. To execute this asynchronous function, I am making a call from here. And now let's go and check the output. You can see we are getting the first call, we are getting the second call. Right? So the way it will work, when my page is loaded, this function will be executed. As this function is an asynchronous function, it will execute this line, hold unless and until this function, this method call has been completed. After that, the cursor will move to the next line, hold unless and until this line has been completed, and then only it will come out. Again, I am repeating, you cannot use this await keyword outside the asynchronous function. Right? Let's say here, if you miss to put the asynchronous and you have used the await, you can see that you will getting the exception here. The exception says that await is only valid in the asynchronous function. So you have to make sure that you are putting the asynchronous keywords before the function whenever you are using the asynchronous. Any questions? Let me go and check the comment section again. Mayur have one question. Could you please explain the arrow function? Mayur, I insist, if you go over the previous recording of the arrow function, right, I believe you will get the understanding about the arrow function. Still, if you do have any question, you can let me know in the Telegram channel. I will give you a good documentation so that you can go over that arrow function. Okay, and still if it is not clear, definitely you can put a request in the Telegram channel. I will go and repeat it for sure. Any other question, folks? Okay, now let's move towards the few advanced part about the promises as well as on the async await. Because in case you guys are planning to appear for the JavaScript certification, there will be definitely a good number of questions on the promises as well as on the async await, and these questions will involve across the different methods that are available with the promise. Like with the promise, we do have the different types of method, like the Promise.all method, Promise.any method, or the Promise.race method. All these methods looks somewhat similar, same, but the way they work is quite different. Okay, so let's try to understand first method, that is the Promise.all method. What this Promise.all method is. So the Promise.all method, it takes the input as an array or any iterable object, but for the time being I am giving an example of an array. So here we do have the Promise.all, and here we pass all the different promises that we are expecting to perform. Let's give an example. Let's say you in your Lightning web component, you want to load the JavaScript file, and you want to load the style sheets, or you want to load the multiple JavaScript file, and you want your processing should continue once all the JavaScript files or all the CSS file has been loaded in your Lightning web component. How you will make sure that? By using the Promise.all method. So what the Promise.all method will do here, Promise.all method, it will give you the successful response. Listen me very carefully, it is quite confusing. The Promise.all method, it will give you the successful response if all the promises that you are passing here will be resolved. In case if any one of the promise that you are passing here is rejected, right, then you will get the rejection message. You will not get the successful message. Again, I am repeating, whenever you are dealing with the multiple promises, okay, in case in your lightning web component, let's say you have to load all the promises. You have to load your javascript file with the help of promise. You have to load your scripting file with the help of promise. You have to load your style files with the help of promise, and you want that the remaining processing should be done only and only when all your files has been loaded successfully. How you will make sure that? By using the Promise.all method. So Promise.all method, it will give you the successful response only when all the promises that you are passing in the array is resolved. In case any single promise has been rejected, then you will get the reject reason here. Next key point, in case all your promises has been resolved, then you will get the output of the promise in the same sequence in which you are defining the promises in the array. In case your promises are successful, then you will get the output in the exact same way that you have defined the promises in the array. Definitely you can use the promise.all and handle the promise by using the .then method or by using the async await method. Here for a demo purpose, I will be showing you with the async await because I feel that this approach is quite cleaner to write or quite easy to understand as well. Definitely, in case you are comfortable with the .then or .catch approach, you can go with this approach as well. Okay, so here what they are doing, they are handling all the promises. Here they are checking in case all the promises are successful, they are printing the value. In case the promises got rejected, they are printing the error message here. Now let's go and try to do this now with the help of one example. So what I'll be doing here is, let me go back to the code editor. Let me clear this out. The first thing that I will be doing here is I will go and create one. I will go and create two methods. Let's say my first method here is the result timeout and second method here is the reject timeout. So let me quickly go here and write down two methods. First method is result timeout. What this method is doing, this method is accepting two parameter. First one is the value and second one is the delay, and this method it will return me the promise. So let me go and put the promise here. Again, it does have the resolve. Again, I'm defining only one parameter here because I'm not interested to reject anything from this method. So in case you want, you can definitely go and do that as well. And what this method is doing, this method is again having the set timeout, which will print the error message for the resolution. So here I put the resolve and define the value here. Whatever the value that we are getting, I'm sending that message, and the next parameter that I am sending here is the how much delay that I am looking for in my set timeout method. So I am putting that delay here, right? So a very simple method which is taking two parameter, value as well as delay. This method is generating the promise for me, right? Again, here in case the promise is successful, here we are resolving the promise and after the delay has been passed. Like similar, I do have another method with the exact same syntax. The only difference here is this method is rejecting the timeout. This method is reject the timeout. Again, this method also take two things. First is the reason and second is the delay. So here in case I am performing the rejection, so let me go and put here the reject, and let me go and reject this from here. Let me go and perform the rejection from here, and I am rejecting the promise. So again, reject cannot be the first parameter, so we have to go and define the resolve comma reject. Okay, in case we have to drop any right hand side parameter, we can definitely go and drop it, but we cannot drop any left hand side parameter. So in case I have to use the reject, I have to go and define the resolve here. Okay, so I do have the two methods available here. Now what I want to do here is I want to invoke both these methods and send that as a promises. So how to do that? Let me go and define the asynchronous function here, and I'm naming that asynchronous function as a load. You can give any name, it's completely fine. So here what I am doing, I do have the two promises. One is the resolve promise and second one is the reject promise. So let me go and call both this method one by one. So what I am doing here is, or let me keep it like this. Let promise1 is equal to, I am calling this method promise timeout. Here this method is accepting two things. First one is the value, let's say welcome to tech journey with Ankit, and second one is the delay. Let's say I'm putting here the delay of 5000 seconds. So this is my first promise. Now I do have another promise that I'm naming it as a promise 2, and in this promise I'm calling the reject timeout, and let's say here we are putting the error message as loading failed. And let's say here what I am doing here is I'm increasing the timer by 7000 seconds. So I do have the two promises. Now I want my next processing should be done only and only when both the promises are completed. I want my next processing should be done whenever my both promise has been resolved. So how I can make sure that? For that we do have the method called Promise.all. For that, we do have the method called Promise.all. What this method will take? This method will take an array of promises. So my promise 1 is the first promise and my promise 2 is the second promise. I am storing the output of these promises into another variable. Let me go and define that variable as the all promise. I'm defining that variable as the all promise. Now here I am checking that whether my promises are successful or not. In case both of my promises are successful, then what will happen? Then it will print the promise response. Otherwise, it will print the error message. So let me go and do that as well. So again, as I said, I'll be doing this with the help of async await. So I'm executing this promise with the help of await keyword here. And let me go and put await, what is that method name? All promise. And let me go and store the list here. Whatever the list of promises that has been resolved, I am printing that list here. So let me go and put here console.log list. In case my promise has been rejected, then what will happen? Then I am printing the error message. Whatever the error message that we are getting, I am simply printing that error message here. Okay, now let me go and call this load function from here. Where is the load function? Like here. The way it will work now, let me give a dry run here. So the way it will work, when my component is loading, load function will be called, which is an asynchronous function. It will invoke this promise, it will invoke this promise. Now I do have another method called promise.all, which will check whether both the promises that has been invoked is resolved or not. In case both the promise has been resolved, then what will happen here? The await line will execute and it will return the list. In case both the promises are rejected, then we will get the error message. First, okay, rather than me go and call here the promise 2, let me go and call here the same promise here, and we will make both of this result. So let me put the another message here. Welcome to day 12 of bootcamp. Okay, so what will be the output? So whenever you are getting this type of questions in the certification, they will give you this code snippet and they will ask you the output. So how you will go and troubleshoot that kind of a question? First, try to understand from where your code will start executing. So in this scenario, my code will start executing from here. Okay, so control will come here. Here this line will execute and it will return the promise. Again here this promise will be resolved because we are calling this resolve timeout method. So my promise will be resolved. Again, this promise also we are resolving. So this promise will also be resolved. What we understood with the help of promise.all, if both the promises are resolved, then we'll get the final output as in the form of all list. In case any one of promise has been rejected, then we will get the error message. Let's go and check the output now. Let me go and refresh this. Let's wait for some time. You can see here my both the promises has been resolved, so I am getting the output here. And as I said, whenever you are using the promise.all, the output that you will get in the same sequence what you are defining in the promise. Let's say here if I change this to promise 2 and here I change this to promise 1, you can see that the sequence of promises has been changed. Output, the sequence of promise output has been changed. Now I am getting welcome to do it 12 bootcamp as the first and welcome to take journey with Ankit as the second. Okay, now the next thing that I want to show you here is what if any of the promise has been rejected. Let's say here by one of my promise has been resolved and one of my promise has been rejected. Now what will be the output? Anyone like to mention in the comment section what will be the output in this scenario? You can see uh, okay, sorry, I have made one mistake in my code. That's why we are getting that error here. I do have the reason. So let me go and put this reason and refresh the page. Now you can see here we are getting the error message as the loading failed. Okay, we have not passed any message for the delay. I believe that's why we are getting this default message. Reject timeout. Yeah, this is the message that we have passed. Loading failed. You can see here we are getting the output here as the loading failed. Why this output is coming up? Because in case of promise.all, my all the promises is not resolved. I hope it is clear to everyone. Do anyone have any questions on the promise.all? Again, we use this kind of functionality in the LWC. So in case you do have any questions, let me know. Moving towards the next method, which is somewhat similar to the promise.all, but the output now frequently varies here. So what is Promise.any now? So first we understood the Promise.all, where all the promises needs to be resolved to get the output. Now the difference with the Promise.all and the Promise.any here is it will return you the output if any of the promise has been resolved. It will return you the output if any one of your promise has been resolved. Again, this method also accept the array of different promises. Right? This method will definitely ignore all the rejection and it will return you the resolved promise as well. Now again, if I go back to the same example, what I am doing in this example, only thing that I am changing here is the from all to any. What I am doing in this example, I am changing here from all to any. This is the single line of change that I have done here. Now what is happening here in this promise? One promise is getting resolved and one promise is getting rejected. Now what will be the output? Now what will be the output in this scenario when one promise will be the resolved and another promise will be the rejected? In this scenario, we will get the successful message. In case we are using the all, we will be getting the rejection message. But in case I am using here the promise.any, then what we will get? We will get the successful message. Let's go and check this out again. You can see here we are getting the successful message here. Even though one of my promise has been rejected, what I am getting here is the successful message. Coming towards the another method with the promise. So we understood the promise.all, we understood the promise.any. Now the next method that we do have is the promise.race. Now the way promise.race will work, basically it implies that all the promises will race against each other. So what all the different promises that you do have in the array, they will all race with each other. Which one is first resolved or which one is first rejected, that will be your output. Right? How the promise.race will work? Promise.race implies that all the promises that you do have in the array, they will race with each other. Right? And out of those, there will be only one single winner. Out of those, there will be only one single winner. most of the times developer do get confused between the Promise.any as well as between the Promise.race. Promise.any, it will return you the any successful promise. In case you do have all the promise has been rejected, then that's a different story. Then it will return you the empty array, or it will show you the rejection message. Okay, in case all the promises has been rejected in the Promise.any, then it will show you the rejected message. But the way Promise.race works here is, if all the promises in the input array are rejected, then it will go you and also give you the rejection array as well. But initially it will work and do the racing amongst all the promises. Whatever the promise has been resolved or whatever the promise has been rejected, it will give you that output. Let's go and change that here now. So let's say I do have the similar kind of a scenario. My first promise, it will be resolved in 5000 seconds. My second promise, it will be resolved in the 7000 milliseconds. Right now, which will go and win the race. So what I am doing here, again on the line number 15, I am changing this from Promise.any to Promise.race. Let me go and save this and we will check the output now. Here, as my first promise is getting resolved, you can see that we are getting the least welcome to the Take Journey with Ankit as an output, because this promise is getting resolved first. What if here, if I go and change this milliseconds from 7000 to 3000? Now which promise will go and resolve first? My second promise will go and resolve first, where I am performing the rejection. So you can see here we are getting the rejection message here. So you can see that we are getting the rejection message here. So again I am repeating, the way it will works here is all of your promises, they are making the race. Whichever is resolved first or whichever is getting rejected first, that will be the output in the Promise.race. That will be the output in the Promise.race. That's all what I have planned for today, folks. In case you do have any questions, kindly let me know in the comment section. So today we have covered basically the overview of the promises. We have covered the async await, and also we have covered the different methods that we do have for the promises. Like we do have the Promise.all, we do have the Promise.any, and we do have the Promise.race. A quick summary: Promise.all, it will be resolved when all the promises that you are passing in the array is resolved. Otherwise, it will, if any of the promise has been rejected, then your promise is completely rejected. Promise.any, again the way it will work is, if any of the promise has been resolved, then it will give you the resolved output. If all the promises are rejected, then and then only it will give you the rejected output. Third one is the Promise.race. In the Promise.race, all the promises will go and do the race with each other. Whichever the promise has been resolved or rejected first, that will be the output. Right? When I appeared for the JavaScript certification, there was more than 3 to 4 questions on the Promise.all, Promise.race, as well as the Promise.any. With all the different kinds of scenarios, they will ask you what will be the output. They will ask you whether you are getting the successful response or rejection response. So promise and the async await, it is not only important from the certification point of view, it is also very important from the LWC point of view as well. I hope you guys got some learning from the today's session. In case you do have any questions or queries, you can let me know in the comment section. Thank you, folks. I hope you liked that session. In case yes, then make sure that you are hitting the like button as well and subscribing to the channel too. Thank you. We will see you tomorrow at the same time.